Hi, my name is Dennis Keating. I'm the pastor of Emmanuel Faith Community Church in Escondido, California. That's North San Diego County. And I'm really honored to be asked to be part of this leadership network to the SAGE ministry here and tell you a little bit about what I've learned in the ministry. I've been here at Emmanuel Faith for 31 years. 10 years as the college pastor, 4 years in an adult ministry position, and then 17 years as the senior pastor. It's been a great opportunity for me to grow and develop, but if I was sitting across from you, and if I had just the opportunity to share with you one key idea of what I wish I did differently at the beginning of the ministry, I'd sum it up by saying this. I've learned that you can't play father to the world. Now let me explain that just a little bit. When I became the senior pastor here, the scope of my ministry expanded immensely. And I, quite frankly, wasn't prepared for all the pressures of that ministry. I began to develop some chest pains, and as a result of the chest pains, some other things started working in my life. And boy, I started falling quickly. And almost in every dimension of my life, I found myself getting more and more exhausted as I tried to give myself away to more and more people. I started trying to play father to the world. It impacted me mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It kind of all came to a head in my life when I was away speaking at a conference. I had pretty much stopped eating. I'd been sleeping only a couple, 3 hours each night. And I found myself experiencing for the very first time an anxiety attack. I was in a cabin and I just started bawling my eyes. I was just sobbing and I couldn't stop. I knew something was desperately wrong. I had no idea what it was. Well, I finally came back to to where I lived and got some counseling, and I started to put some of these pieces together, and I started learning some really important things in my life. I didn't want to feel guilty anymore, and I felt guilty a lot. I didn't want to feel empty. I didn't want to feel depressed, but I was going through all of it. And I discovered something that a very wise pastor had told me before. He said, it's not the things you do in ministry that tend to kill you. It's the things that you don't get done. Because every day when I've left the office, there's always another 10 people to call on the phone. There's always another dozen people to visit in the hospital. There's always another sermon to preach. There's always somebody to witness to. Everybody needs counseling. So I just found myself just giving and giving and giving and giving, trying to play father to the world. And it wasn't long until all of my gauges were pegged on empty. And I'll tell you, that's a horrible, horrible place to be. Well, I came back from it all, and I made a key decision in my life. It's summed up with this statement. Well, with my wife, we decided that just because the ministry calls doesn't mean that God calls. Just because somebody telephones me and said, Pastor, I got to see you today, didn't mean that was God saying that I needed to leave. I had to begin to understand my limitations. I had to begin to understand how God wanted me to do this over the long haul if I was going to survive. You have to make up your mind. You can't play father to the world. And I would encourage you to think through. Just because the ministry calls you to do something doesn't mean that God is calling you to do it. And when I made that key decision, a few things started happening in my life. First, my wife and my kids developed some hope. Hope that I was going to be around when I said I was going to be around. I wasn't leaving all the time because of some family emergency. What I started doing, sounds a little bit rigid even, but I started putting our family times on my calendar. And I wouldn't violate that. If somebody called and said, Pastor, can I see you today? I'd tell them I already have an appointment, because that was the truth. It just happened to be with my wife or my kids. And this is where that health started to come back. It gave them great hope that the ministry was not more important than they were. You can't play father to the world. Secondly, I discovered that I could begin to be honest with myself about the processes that I had developed, the patterns in my own life. I started asking some pretty tough questions. Why was I in the ministry? Why did I do what I was doing? We all get in the ministry to help people, to care for people, but sometimes that caring can become more about us than about the people that we're supposed to be helping. I had to decide, just because the ministry calls doesn't mean that God was calling. The third thing that it did, it forced me to interact real honestly with my board as well. They were a covering for me. And I had to go to them and ask, what are your priorities for my life? It brought us together in a major way. Probably the biggest way that it did was the fourth thing that these decisions make. I finally decided what I did best. I was saying nothing beats a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. So if you've got it, throw it. Do what you do best. There's only one father to the world, and you have to do what you can do and let him take care of the rest. So anyway, thanks for letting me share with you. You can't play father to the world.